Welcome back to the Jimmy Mathis Show. Time for the Stone Zone. Former Donald Trump top advisor Roger Stone joins the program. A very busy week for Donald Trump and a change in his rhetoric.
Our whole country loses when young people of limitless potential are denied the opportunity to contribute their talents because we fail to provide them the opportunities that they deserve. Let our children be dreamers too.
Roger Stone joins the program. Good morning, Mr. Stone. How you doing?
Good morning, Jimmy. How are you?
Good to talk to you. A lot I want to get to you with today. Obviously, the shakeup with Paul Manafort leaving the campaign. We'll get to that in 1 second. A much more scripted Donald Trump is something that we've seen in the past, but then he seems to kind of tack back to his old ways. Is this the way we're going to see Donald Trump for the next 80 days or here leading into November?
Well, I think you're going to see a continuation of the scripted speeches, which are really put on teleprompter for two reasons. One, because there's so much that needs to be said. A lot of it gets lost when he speaks extemporaneously, as you know. And secondarily, I think it's important in terms of the positioning. Trump is the outsider in this race. The insiders have been running things for at least 8 years at this point. Hillary would be a continuation of that, and therefore it is not unfair to say, how are black people doing under Obama and how would they do under Clinton? How are Latinos doing? How are blue-collar workers doing? How are all Americans workers doing, for example? As you know, the unemployment statistics for African Americans are so bad that they have to remove those who aren't looking for work anymore from the count in order to make it look better than it is.
Right.
And the numbers are still abysmal. So Trump must be the candidate of opportunity. He must be the candidate of upward mobility. He must be the candidate of prosperity. And I think he's starting to flesh that out. Once he has established that, I actually think that's the message that he has to take to the Hispanic community, where he clearly has to make some gains. You cannot get elected president with 9% of the Hispanic vote. For a Republican, you could probably get elected with somewhere between 25 and 30% of the Hispanic vote. And I have seen polling, for example, that shows us that is possible with efforts like you saw this week.
Well, the shot at the end of that clip we just played on, our children want to be dreamers too, that was obviously in reference to the president's DACA program. Look, I mean, that's going to land with a lot of Americans. I don't know if that hurts them with the Latino vote, but it's definitely reflective of the way I think a lot of people in this country are feeling right now. Before you came on the show, we were talking about here in Maryland, where Spanish is now mandatory for a lot of the schools in the fourth grade, and there's just this feeling that we're kind of conceding our own culture here. And this is what Donald Trump's been running on from the very beginning. I mean, his big ticket issue from the word go was border security and immigration.
Well, but the Hispanics who are opposed to Trump most violently on those issues are illegals and those outside the country, particularly those Latinos who have come to this country legally, gone through the steps necessary, which is not easy, become U.S. citizens, begin paying taxes, and so on. Their number one concern is not border security. It's, will I have a job?
Right. Will
my next job be better than the job I have now, or will there be no jobs? How am I going to put food on the table for my family? So the irony here, of course, is that in the very week that Paul Manafort and I'm going to presume the pollster Tony Fabrizio, who in my opinion is the best survey researcher in the country, if not just the Republican Party, on the week that they depart the campaign, what you saw this week was the manifestation of the system that Manafort has put in place. And Trump did stick to a script, and it was an extremely effective week for him. You see him in the new Rasmussen poll climbing up, only 2 points down. I suspect it's maybe closer to 3 or 4, but he is not nationally behind by an insurmountable lead by Hillary. And then secondarily, if you look at these big states, he has floated back up to a competitive situation. He's probably behind by a point or two still in a few places, but the race began moving back his way. They have enormous work to do to get where they need to be by Election Day. They've got to make inroads among women. They've got to make inroads among Hispanics. They have to make inroads among Asian Americans. They also have to shore up their Republican base. There's a few white Republican males out there that he's still not getting. Not many, 8-9%, but it would make a huge overall difference.
We're talking to Roger Stone right now, former Donald Trump advisor, and you're also business partners with Paul Manafort. You've been a big defender of his over the last couple of weeks. Were you surprised to see him leave the campaign?
No, because Manafort is a close friend. I was in on his deliberations and the situation. Look, the entire thrust of the Clinton campaign that Donald Trump is somehow in bed with Vladimir Putin and the Russians. He's never met Putin nor communicated with him, and that Manafort somehow facilitates that is a false narrative. The DNC leaks that nailed Deborah Wasserman Schultz in the heist against Bernie Sanders was not leaked by the Russians. It was leaked by Crucifer II, I should say hacked and leaked, first by Crucifer II, well-known hacker who's not in the employ of the Russians, and then WikiLeaks. So that whole claim is a canard. It's actually pretty outrageous. They call us conspiracy theorists, but they have one of the two candidates for president of the United States is a traitor in league with a foreign power. There's a conspiracy theory for you. It's nonsense. But Manafort's swashbuckling adventures in Ukraine, where he worked for a political party and never worked for the government of either Ukraine or Russia, where he went through guided them through 3 parliamentary elections and a presidential election, strictly political consulting. This new claim that he lobbied without filing, I think once people examine that, they will determine that no, he turned around and hired as a subcontractor lobbyists who filed all the appropriate registrations to represent the client. That's not the piece of business that Manafort did. So Manafort, being a professional, Manafort putting the interests of Donald Trump first, chose to resign rather than allow this whole Putin, Ukraine, Russia narrative to continue to run. It's nonsensical, but the media keeps wanting to write it and I think over-report it. The New York Times story about business dealings is a total MacGuffin. There's just no there. He's done nothing wrong, and there is no evidence that he has. All there is are rumors.
Let me ask you a question. At some point, did Paul Manafort lose I don't want to say control of Donald Trump, but you look at the Trump that we saw last week, that was very much what Paul was pushing for, was that more scripted Donald Trump. And again, at certain points in the past, Trump would present himself that way, including at the convention, which was really Paul's primary goal, right, was to get him through the convention, make sure it wasn't a contested convention, make sure that speech came off, solid, and Trump introduced himself to the nation at the convention in a very positive way. But it seems like Paul Manafort wasn't able to keep him on message, like Donald Trump kept kind of...
No one will be able to, because Trump is Trump, and he will decide what the message is, but he's becoming more disciplined about it. Yeah, I think my hat's off to Manafort. His job was to bring order out of chaos. The previous campaign manager, Louis Korendowski, had run this into the ground. They had no state operation. To the extent that they did, it was run by children who have never been in politics before. They had no research operation. They had no press operation beyond Hope Hicks, who's a great lady, but a one-woman band at that point. Manafort has built a structure for them. There is a Hispanic outreach plan in development. There is a African-American outreach plan in development. There is
it's already been in development, Roger. I mean, we're 80 days. Yeah, but we're 80 days outside of a general election.
Yeah, but you know what? This is going to be a Labor Day to Election Day effort. Nobody's paying attention right now but us, Jimmy, and we're junkies. Let's face it.
No, there's a lot of truth to that. And, you look to see what, if any, the October surprise will be. 80 days is still an eternity when you're speaking politically. But, I look at the... I look at the rhetoric. I'm not just talking about the style in which he delivered it, but when he brought up the Dreamers and he's talking about really the extreme vetting. Amen. The media is going to sit here and bastardize it. There is nothing. We were talking immigration before you came on, Roger. In the past, all right, you needed to want to be an American, to embrace our culture, to live by our Constitution, and there's not a guarantee that you get a ticket if you don't want to be an American. This is pretty standard stuff through the course of our history, and just the way the media is bending and manipulating Donald Trump's words is it's frustrating.
Well, for example, look at the column inches of reporting on the so-called Manafort shakeup, or I should say the campaign shakeup, and now compare that to the coverage of the actual words and content of Trump's speech, and you see the problem. You have a gotcha brand of journalism here. Most of the reporters are secretly supportive of the Clintons and their policies.
Yeah.
Most of them are liberal Democrats to begin with. Trump and Manafort are right. The mainstream media here is so hysterically one-sided that it's extraordinary.
Roger, always a pleasure. Roger Stone, former Donald Trump advisor, also author of his new books, The Clinton War on Women, also Jeb and the Bush Crime Family. Always a pleasure, sir. I'll talk to you next Sunday.
Great to be with you. By the way, you can get The Clintons' War on Women, the definitive expose of Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea by going to rogerstone.com or go to Amazon or go to Barnes & Noble. Many thanks, Jimmy.
And another great book, the first one that put me in contact with you was The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. Great read, so I encourage everybody to go out and get that one also. Roger,
we'll be coming out next year with 3 new chapters of additional information that we've learned about the psychology and corruption of Lyndon Baines Johnson. Many thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Roger. Talk to you next week, 9:18. Be right back.